History was made in Daytona 500 qualifying tonight. Chase Briscoe becomes Toyota's first ever, believe it or not, their first ever Daytona 500 pole sitter. Toyota joined the Cup Series in 2007, and it took them 18 years, I guess that would be 19 attempts at the Daytona 500 qualifying to get their first pole, and it's with first year, first race, first qualifying session, Chase Briscoe. So yes, their first pole comes with a first-year driver. Kind of crazy that Hamlin never did it, Kyle Busch never did it, Matt Kenseth never did it, Carl Edwards never did it. I mean, just to name a few of the great drivers they've had, but Chase Briscoe in his first attempt. And also, on top of that, that's 3 straight poles for the 19 car. Remember, Martin Truex Jr. drove this car last year. He won the pole at Martinsville in the fall. He won the pole for the Phoenix finale. And then Chase Briscoe, James Small show up here and qualify on pole. That 19's got something figured out in qualifying, it is safe to say. But Chase Briscoe on pole, who's on the front row with him? It's Austin Cindric and the Team Penske number 2. The number 2 starts number 2. And Team Penske, once again, showing speed in qualifying. Joey Logano, he was on pole last season. He made it to this final round of qualifying. In fact, qualified 4th fastest tonight. Now, of course, the rest of the field, the starting order for the actual Daytona 500 will be set tomorrow night after the dual races, depending on those results. If you don't know, if you are starting or if you qualified tonight in an odd numbered position, you are in duel number 1. So 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 11th, 9th, 13th, so on and so forth. Those guys are in duel 1. 2nd, 4th, 6th, 8th, 10th, 12th, 14th, and on. They are in duel number 2. So that will set the lineup, and then depending on where you finish in each duel, duel 1 sets the inside row of the Daytona 500. Duel number 2 sets the outside row of the Daytona 500, with the only positions being set the front row of Chase Briscoe and Austin Cindric. So Chase Briscoe, he can finish last in the duel tomorrow, and he still gets pole because he qualified fastest. Austin Cindric, same story for him. But everyone else, so looking down this list, Cody Ware starting 45th or qualified 45th. If he goes up and wins the duel tomorrow night, he starts 3rd. So you know who the pole sitter for Sunday's Daytona 500 is, pending tomorrow's duel. If he crashes and has to go to a backup car, he does have to drop to the rear. But we know the front row. We know what the setup is for tomorrow night's dual races. But what about those last 4 spots? Remember, 36 cars are locked into this race. Any car that has a charter, it doesn't matter. As I said, Cody Ware qualified 45th. But because that 51 car has a charter, he is guaranteed a spot in the race. So it does not matter that he qualified 45th. He's in. He could have qualified 49th, 50th, 82nd. He is in the race. But 36 cars in, that leaves 4 spots open. Well, we have 45 cars. So how are we going to narrow this down? How are we going to chop that 9 to 4? Well, we got 2 spots filled tonight. The 2 highest qualifiers are into the Daytona 500, regardless of how they do in the duels tomorrow. Those 2 drivers are Cup Series champions, actually, Martin Truex Jr. and Jimmie Johnson. Truex qualified 22nd, Johnson qualified 29th, but those were the 2 highest open cars on the night, and they were able to lock in their spots in the Daytona 500, and that means that tomorrow, Justin Allgaier, Anthony Alfredo, BJ McLeod, JJ Yeley, Corey LaJoie, and Chandler Smith all have to fight for 2 spots in the Daytona 500. There's one notable name I left out there that's an open car, and that's Helio Castroneves. Castroneves is driving the Project 91 car. He is driving the Trackhouse Racing part-time car that is set aside for international drivers. Castroneves making his first ever attempt at the Daytona 500. And usually in this open car, you would have to qualify in. As I said earlier, only 4 spots. He would have either had to be one of the 2 quickest tonight, or he would have had to be one of the 2 highest finishing tomorrow night. And because of this new rule, Castroneves doesn't have to do either. This new rule is the OEP, the open exemption provisional. And essentially what it is it's a lock. It locks you into the race regardless of what you do. If Castroneves qualified 45th tonight and ran last in the duel tomorrow night, he would have been in the Daytona 500. It's been a little bit controversial. It's been a pretty hot topic this week around NASCAR, the media center, the drivers, a lot of different takes. It's kind of polarizing in a sense. So what this does, and this is something we haven't seen before, is you have 90 days to essentially file some paperwork, file whatever you got to file, and NASCAR, on a case-by-case basis, can determine who gets the OEP. Only one is allowed per race weekend, and it's for a driver of high regard, someone who's known around the world, known around NASCAR maybe, like Jimmie Johnson. If he applied for it before Helio Castroneves, he might have gotten it. But it's for a driver of high stature, and it's for a driver who is heavily accomplished in their career. And Trackhouse jumped on it first. They were the ones to get that OEP signed up for. And because of that, Castroneves, regardless of what he does tomorrow night, regardless of what he did tonight, he is in the Daytona 500 field. And that is why the other open drivers, and not Truex and Jimmie Johnson anymore, they have to fight for those final two spots. However, let's complicate this a little bit more. Let's say Jimmie Johnson and Martin Truex Jr., they are in separate duels tomorrow night. Let's say those two are the highest open cars to finish in their duels. So let's just make it easy. Say Jimmie Johnson wins a duel, Martin Truex Jr. wins a duel. They win their duels. Cool story. Well, that means that they just made the Daytona 500 via their duel result. So now there's two spots back open? That's right. If Jimmie Johnson and Truex Jr. both win their duels, that means that Corey LaJoie and Justin Allgaier would get into the Daytona 500 via their qualifying speed. So those guys were third and fourth out of the 9 open cars. It's extremely complicated. I don't know why, but it is. And this is how we do it in NASCAR for the Daytona 500. But yes, after all of that, in conclusion, we had tonight Daytona 500 qualifying. Chase Briscoe's on pole, Austin Cindric's on the front row. Unless they have to change a part or switch cars due to something happening in the duel tomorrow, that is your front row on Sunday. Everyone else, those positions can change. Just because Ryan Preece qualified third tonight does not mean he qualifies third Sunday. If he spins out on the last lap of the duel tomorrow, he starts 39th, I guess it would be. So you're not locked in there. 2 drivers are locked into the Daytona 500 out of the 9 open cars. Martin Truex Jr., 2017 Cup Series champion, reunited with Cole Perrin, and he's driving for Tricon. He's got Bass Pro Shops, the 56 car, so many things coming back together for him. He's got another shot at the Daytona 500. Jimmie Johnson also locked in tonight, the 7-time champion with a Shaquille O'Neal Orlando Magic paint scheme on the car. Shaq's going to be there on Sunday now. He is locked into the Daytona 500. Toyota showed a lot of speed tonight, which I think was kind of unexpected, if we're being honest, because really Chevy and Ford have dominated this qualifying for quite a while. As I said, Toyota won their first ever Daytona 500 pole tonight with Chase Briscoe. Number 1, not making that stat up. So as a result, Toyota, they were not really favored at all. Ford dominated. I think they won every super speedway pole last year at Atlanta, Talladega, and Daytona. Chevrolet, prior to last year, they had a stranglehold on Daytona 500 qualifying. Larson, Bowman, Elliott, Jeff Gordon, if we go back far enough, and I think even Stenhouse, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had a pole somewhere in there. So Toyota tonight really made a statement, and yes, Daytona 500 qualifying, at the end of the day, it is not a huge impact. We have not seen the pole winner win the Daytona 500 since the beginning of the century back in 2000 with Dale Jarrett, but it's still a big deal. It's a huge deal to win the Daytona 500 pole. It's a big deal for the teams. The driver, yes, they have to drive the car, but this is the qualifying session that reflects biggest on the teams. And Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota, they made the biggest statement tonight, I would say. Other notable qualifying results. How about Ty Dillon? Ty Dillon made the final round of qualifying, ends up going ninth, but he was fifth fastest in that first round. Josh Berry made the final round. He ended up qualifying fifth. That's kind of crazy. Good for Josh Berry. Denny Hamlin, he's also up there in the top 10. Austin Dillon's up there in the top 10. Kyle Larson, the lone Hendrick Motorsports car, in the top 10. Once again, after I said that they had such a strong hold on qualifying all those years, back-to-back years without a pole, and now Larson, the highest qualifier, in 10th. Brad Keselowski, 16th, and this is of note because RFK, both the 6 and the 60 today in practice this morning, they had some mechanical problems, and they had to go fix those mechanical problems. And if we didn't have that practice session, they would have figured that out tonight in qualifying, and it would have been a bigger impact on Priest because of how well he qualified. But it is of note. They ended up switching some parts. I think it was like a fuel pump or something. They also ended up switching some parts on the 17 as well. Shane Van Gisbergen went 30th in his first ever Daytona 500 qualifying session. Trackhouse overall, bad qualifying. I mean, once again, qualifying speed, race speed, it's so different. Like, it's don't look too much into it. But, I mean, Trackhouse, 25th, 30th. Chastain's down here in 37th. And then Castro Neves in 39th. Justin Allgaier, that was a little bit of a shock, I would say, in 33rd. Thought they were going to have some Hendrick power. But Hendrick, as I said, as a whole, they were really not on it, with only Larson getting into the final round. So... But yes, day number 1 of Speed Week, singular, now, it's over. We have the Daytona 500 pole winner. It's Chase Briscoe. Toyota gets pole win number 1. The 19 gets its 3rd pole in a row. Austin Cindric will be starting on the front row with Briscoe. The dual lineups are set for tomorrow. Martin Truex Jr., he's in the 500. Jimmie Johnson is in the 500. 2 former champs will not miss the race. 2 spots remain. Helio Castroneves, once again, he is in regardless of tomorrow night's result. And, of course, tomorrow night, the duels. They will be fun. They will be exciting. I'll be back here tomorrow to make a video on that and the rest of the weekend. We got Trucks on Friday, Xfinity Saturday, Cup Series, Daytona 500. Maybe on Monday.